Hello, friends. Welcome back to Dare Me to Prosper. My name is Avery, and I am your host. Today's episode is 2026 predictions, what all the psychics are predicting for 2026. Now, last year, for the 2025 predictions, that was my biggest episode of the year. And rightfully so. I know that with all the chaos happening in the collective, we are all just dying to know, like, what is going to happen? Is this going to get better? Are things going to get worse? Like, what should we expect? I want to know those things just as much as the rest of you. So for this episode, I have tuned into my own psychic gifts. And per usual, I have also looked at a lot of different psychics, channelers, remote viewers, and people that I tend to go back to over and over, that in my discernment I trust, as well as just consistent narratives that I've heard over time, combined with my own psychic reading. Now, what I tend to do when I do this is I look for patterns. So instead of looking at one particular psychic and just taking down everything that they say, the way that I construct these episodes is I look at over time, like weeks, months, and then especially the days up to recording this episode, I look at what everybody is saying, and then I look for patterns of what are the most consistent narratives that multiple people have said, multiple people have touched on. So I hate to say this, but I don't tend to credit like individuals in this episode because I'm not directly speaking from like what one person has said specifically. It's more just like information that I have collected over time. So, as always, take it or leave it. A reminder that there is no such thing as a set in stone future prediction. We all have free will. Timelines are always changing and shifting. What I am going to present now is just the most stable, the strongest energy projection from where we are right now. So things can always change and shift, but from where we are right now, this is what is most likely in my own personal interpretation and observations. Now, that being said, I kind of just dived in like I tend to do, but I did miss an episode last week. It's the first time I've missed an episode, and I hated to do it. However, y'all, I've been struggling. I have been sick. My whole family has been sick. For 4 or 5 days, I was watching my nieces as well as my 3 kids. And while I absolutely adored it, it was a lot while I was sick. And then just all the traveling and Christmas. And I am just tired. And I'll be honest, mentally, I have not been in a great place. And I'm actually going to do another episode on that because I genuinely believe there's a big energetic reason for that. But my mind has been a little dark lately and not having the best time. So I'll do another episode on that soon. But I say all that to say that I considered like waiting until I was in a better emotional place to record this episode. And I just feel like what's most important and really kind of, again, the energy that I want to bring into 2026 is authenticity. Not that you have to push or hustle or do anything that is unaligned when you don't feel well. That's not the message. The message is more like, I prefer to come and present myself as authentically as possible. I really don't ever want to be the person that is coming to you from my highlight reel or inauthentically just so I can present a certain way. I really appreciate when other people are authentic and I really resonate with those people and I'm drawn to those people. And so I just want to be frank with you. I love this topic. I love this podcast. I love recording. I'm just being honest that my mental health has been absolutely in the trash for the last week or so. It's been up and down, but just like the last few days, I'm like, why? This is dark. Like I'm struggling. Anyway. So if you can hear that my tone is a little less excitable than lately, that would be why. That being said, I have been working on this episode for a long time and I'm very excited to share it with you. Okay, so let's talk about these predictions. I keep saying this. I need to go back and listen to my 2025 episode and see how it landed. I need to do that and I'll touch on that in the next episode. I just have not had time. But regardless, always keeping in mind, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. This is never like, I'm never presenting any of this as like, this will absolutely happen. This is just like the general direction that we're moving in. And a lot of it tends to be accurate, especially that's why I like to pull from multiple different sources. I'm not just giving you my interpretation. I'm giving you a lot of overlap, which tells me this is the areas where the energy is really strong. And this is the areas where, or these are the areas where it's more reliable because there's multiple people that are picking up on this future energy. So first, I'm going to give you like a main theme that basically everything I'm about to talk about falls under this one idea. And that is basically that in 2026 is a turning point year. It is not the year where everything magically gets better, but it is the year where we look back, similar to how we did in 2020, we look back and we go, that's the year where everything changed. Except it's a little bit different because in 2026, it's not like a downfall year. It's more like that is when things started to improve for the better. Not everything got better overnight, but things started changing and shifting and getting better. 2026 is an action year. It's a things in motion year. 2025 was more like internal and realizations and exposure, but not a whole lot of forward movement. It was like we kind of felt stuck. We kind of felt like held back. 2026 is this year of motion in every single category. 2026 is the year that we start healing. So in true fashion, an analogy that really works for this is that in 2025, it's kind of like we realized we were sick. In 2025, the symptoms started showing. We kind of started seeing all the issues. Like 2025, it was like we got sick. We started realizing like, wow, we have this problem and this problem and this problem and this problem. And we started recognizing all of these different issues that needed fixing. Okay. 2026 is the year where all of the symptoms become really clear. We're still going to have some things pop up that are new, that are going to be like, wow, we didn't know that was how bad it was, or we didn't know that this was going on. But 2026 is basically the year when we start to treat the core issue. It doesn't mean we're completely healed in 2026 or that we're all better and we feel great. That's more like 2027, 2028 energy. But in 2026, it's like, this is the core issue. This is what we're going to start healing. We're not in the dark anymore. We're not confused anymore. We see the problems and we start fixing them, which doesn't mean it's easy, right? Like if you were actually dealing with a chronic illness, it's never easy, but at least having answers is like such a big part of healing. Like if you don't know what you're dealing with, you really can't heal. 2026 is the year where we start understanding this is what we're dealing with. These are the core issues. Now we can start healing and rebuilding and taking action. 2025, we were stuck. We couldn't take action. We could see that there was all these problems. 2026, we start doing something about it and actually seeing forward movement and seeing some relief, which is really, really encouraging when so many of us have been stuck and depressed and in bad situations, in bad relationships. Not everybody. There's no such thing as a blanket statement for every single person on earth. If you have just had an amazing, beautiful year in 2025, awesome. Good for you. I'm genuinely happy for you. However, for the people who haven't, I want to say I see you and I resonate with you and I understand how difficult it can be. And so I am very much looking forward to 2026 and hopefully what becomes this more encouraging upwards trajectory. Okay, what's really fun also, I love symbolism, right? And as those words just left my mouth, I paused recording because I realized, oh, it's really dark in here. I need to like let some light in because my desk sits in front of like 3 windows. And I was like, let me just pause. I need to open up these windows. And then I made the connection in my mind. I was like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, oh, we just realized it's really dark in this room. Another analogy. It's really dark in this room. Let me bring the light in. Like I see the problem. Let me fix it. I'm going to open the blinds. I'm going to let the light in. Now it feels better. Now things start to get better. Anyway, stupid little symbol. But anyhow, okay. So 2026 is an action year. It's a 1 year in numerology, which is all about like new beginnings, whereas 2025 was a 9 year. That's a big deal. And so a lot of us are going to see like a pickup on things that we've been waiting on. Like we're going to, again, start to see the ball start rolling, surges of forward momentum instead of like a slow trickle. And it's really going to be a year of like valuing the self, because for so many years we have been stuck in kind of these relationships and careers and these mental health states that were a whole lot of like sacrificing energy and putting other people before ourselves and just burning out and not having good work-life balance and just feeling depleted and all of that kind of stuff. And 2026, we start calling our energy back and we start stepping into a healthier space where we're not so depleted. We start valuing what we need. It's not selfishness, it's self-care in a way that we're kind of like filling up our cup so that we can be better human beings to the people around us, and we can do better in the things that we want to pursue, and we can just live healthier lives, okay? You can't give to others, you can't do what you are meant to do if you're constantly depleted, which is for many of us the energy that we have been living out of. Okay? Also, for the people that have done the work, you are going to see the fruits of your labor the most. So if you have done the internal work, if you have really worked on yourself, if you have processed emotions, if you have worked on processing trauma and, just being open to seeing the blocks, the obstacles, the bad habits in your life and being open to shifting and changing and all of that, you are going to have a better year than you would if you had not done those things. So some reward for all your effort and hard work. But we're going to talk about internal things and external things. We're going to talk about like spirituality and religion and the financial system, global politics, relationships, nature, changes on earth, all sorts of things. So I've categorized this to the best of my ability. Also, this is very likely to be quite a long episode. I almost wonder if this is going to need to be 2 parts because, again, this last year was my biggest episode of the year, and so I just really want to make sure I'm covering everything, and that might take a while. So let's get into it. Okay, spiritual energy, religion, emotions. Let's talk about it. The first thing that really came up over and over again was like a lot of shifting and changing around religion and spirituality. And there's kind of like 2 camps that this will fall into. The first camp is people who really resonate with organized religion. And there's going to be a lot of what I can only describe as religious upheaval. And globally, there's going to be a lot of heat and, arguments or just like disagreement around religions such as Islam and just like Middle Eastern religion and religions that tend to draw a lot of attention and have a lot of really strong, intense beliefs that affect lots of people even outside of the religion. Okay. And also Christianity, which has gotten really, again, intense lately because it's like as the energy on earth gets really chaotic and intense, people who are already rooted in these really strict religious foundations are going to really want to dig their feet in. People who are not ready to kind of internally depend on themselves more and their own beliefs and their own understandings, people who are really locked into that religious structure are going to dig in their heels. And what that is going to look like kind of globally or politically is going to be a lot of tension and possibly a lot of global, I don't want to say like necessarily like war or, violence, but a lot of political and global disagreement that involves religion. Okay. And from my perspective, this is like a last stand for organized religion, because I do believe, and I've discussed this before, that moving into the future, like 10, 20, 30 years down the road, organized religion will really lose its footing. I don't think we're necessarily going to see it disappear completely, but I think it will become a lot less dogmatic and a lot more just open for interpretation and personal and individual and things like that. However, right now, I feel like they're kind of in this last stand where people are digging in their heels, and there's just going to be a lot of turmoil within how these religions affect like politics and global issues. Okay, so that's like one camp. That's like the first camp of what we may see religiously is people digging into their religious beliefs. However, there is another camp of people who either have never resonated with religion, never been a part of religion, or have been a part of religion and are kind of deconstructing and leaving that. So people who were maybe more nominal and kind of are exploring a more spiritual journey, or people who were religious and start deconstructing, whether they are going down a more spiritual path or whether they're going more like atheists. It doesn't really matter. It's more the shift away from organized beliefs into more internal, individualized beliefs. The energy of 2026 is really nudging people to go inside and trust themselves. Again, back to that, like valuing the self, filling up your own cup. We're starting to come back to self-trust. We're starting to detach from the system, from religious systems, from social systems, from government systems, and we are going more inside to be like, wait a minute, what do I believe? What feels good to me? What resonates with me? What makes sense to me? Rather than trusting all of these outer systems, which we're going to talk about more, what do I think? I want to trust myself. And it's more like it's trusting yourself and trusting what you believe, and that what resonates with you actually has value and actually you can depend on. Also, more spiritual gifts coming online. Like, we've already seen a lot of this in 2025, and I know I've already talked to a lot of people, my own family included, about how people are experiencing more, things like clairaudience and clairvoyance and claircognizance, like things that they are now able to see that they didn't used to be able to see, or downloads or messages that they're receiving that, are just completely new to them or presenting in a new way. All that sort of thing, that intuitive understanding and that psychic understanding really strengthening and coming online. And it's because our frequency is rising, which I talk about in almost every episode, so I'm not going to get into that. But again, we're going to see that even more so in 2026, even faster, even stronger, especially, again, for people that have been doing the work and done the kind of internal processing to unblock any stuck energy. Again, I have a whole course on that if you're interested in really tapping into your psychic gifts. I teach how to do that in a course that is linked in the show notes, but we're going to see a lot more of that. Another thing is people starting to understand how much more connected and similar we are. We're going to basically see more unification of humanity, of people, because we are detaching from these larger systems. And we're really going to get into that when we talk about government and politics and blah, blah, blah. But as we start detaching from the kind of systems, we're going to be automatically connecting more as humanity and as people, which means we are more understanding of just the general public and people who may not agree with everything that we believe in, or vice versa, but just understanding that we are not really each other's enemies. It is the people at the top, the leaders at the top, who are making all of these decisions and quite honestly want us to hate each other because it gives them more power and control. We're going to start pulling away from that and becoming a little bit more unified, not like kumbaya overnight, but again, we're just starting to see that transition happening, which is honestly really encouraging. Another thing, and I think this is really interesting, and this is one of those things where you should pay attention to this to see how it affects you, but there was a very common narrative around people are going to notice that they're feeling a little more disconnected and a little bit more negative towards things like social media or overly crowded spaces or emotional news, like basically anything that really takes people away from their own inner peace or their own inner stability is going to feel more frustrating. So like something like doom scrolling, for example, is not going to feel as rewarding, or something like a really crowded energetic space, like whether it's a concert or just any kind of like really wild energetic space where there's just a lot of energy and there's a lot of just kind of chaos, and that might still be fun, but you're just going to be more sensitive to kind of negative or chaotic energies around you, so that might feel a little bit more uncomfortable. Okay, emotional news or just like things that are really fear-based. Again, you're going to become a little bit more, and I say you're going to become, take this with a grain of salt. This is not like you're absolutely 100% going to become. People are predicted to become more desensitized. Does more desensitized even make sense? People are going to become desensitized to fear-based news and narratives and things like that. Because again, energetically, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit where your energy is and where you are moving to frequency-wise. That no longer resonates with where we will be headed. So it doesn't stick. It doesn't have the effect on us that it used to. Okay, nervous system focus. I have a lot of episodes around the nervous system, but that's going to become a big focus in 2026 because the nervous system is just something we really, really underutilize and don't totally understand in terms of how much it impacts literally everything. And again, I've talked about this in other episodes, but it affects our health. It affects what we manifest. It affects our frequency. It affects our relationships because your nervous system, your frequency and your vibrational level, so to speak, is literally a scale of your emotions, not only your surface emotions, but your deeper energetic emotions. That's why we talk on this podcast so much about processing emotions and being aware of your emotions and, being able to label our emotions and being able to have more self-worth. All of that is the core of who you are and what your life looks like. And if you're not kind of in this realm spiritually and energetic wise, you don't likely understand that, but it's such a big deal. Like our emotions are the scale, they are the tools by which we live our life. And so having a healthy emotional state is directly tied to your nervous system and vice versa. Your nervous system is directly tied to having a healthy emotional state and therefore healthy emotional well-being, healthy mental health, healthy relationships, healthy work-life balance, just a happier, healthier, more aligned life. It all comes back to your nervous system, which is your emotions, which is your frequency and vibration. So that's the core aspect of what I think people should really understand. So that being said, we're going to see a lot of focus on the nervous system because energetically, that's going to be very aligned with where we are. Okay, which comes back to a lot of what I was saying about people are going to be more focused on their inner world and, how healthy they feel emotionally and increased clarity in their own boundaries and personal values. Like, I want to treat myself well. I want to value myself. I want a higher self-worth. I want higher self-confidence. I know what matters to me. I want to pursue the kind of work that is important to me and what I feel is purposeful and things like that. Okay, let's move on to material and financial energy. This one is really exciting to me. This is also one I've been talking about a lot because this is one of the systems that I feel is going to see the most visible change in terms of how we function as a society. Again, this is something that has come up over and over and over again between psychics and channelers and remote viewers is basically how these systems are going to be breaking down and why that's happening, what it will look like, and what it means for you as an individual. Okay. And there's multiple systems that will be doing this because that's part of the whole like I was saying with the analogy, like the symptoms are now all very visible. The financial system is one of the symptoms that is now very visible. We see as a collective how corrupt our financial system is. We see as a collective how much corruption is tied to money and sex and all of these quote unquote leaders. I say leaders in quotes because I hate to even call them that because they're not leaders. They're just in control. They're not really leading us anywhere except death and destruction. Okay. But regardless, this is one of the symptoms that we are now seeing with a fresh new light shine directly on it where we're like, wow, this is really disgusting. This system doesn't work, whether it's credit scores, whether it's the Federal Reserve, it's the way that we pay taxes and how corrupt that is. It's the unsustainable salaries and how the cost of living is completely unbalanced. All of these things within this system, especially while these, people pulling strings at the top are so incredibly wealthy, how the distribution of wealth is so incredibly unbalanced and corrupt. That is the symptom. And now we are starting to treat the root cause. Okay, so this is what that will begin to look like. Again, this isn't the year that all gets fixed. It's the year where we start treating the root cause. It's the year where we start fixing it and stop feeding into it. So what we're going to see, yes, economic upheaval, right? We're already seeing that, and that is going to get worse. Now, before I get into this and before you get all freaked out, it is possible, I've talked about this before, it doesn't mean that individually everybody is going to suffer. It means the economy is going to suffer. And I know this sounds counterintuitive, but the economy is going to suffer. But individually, many of us are going to have better financial years than we have in the past. And I know that logically doesn't seem like it makes sense. We'll get into that more in a little bit. But don't freak out. Individually, you could very likely have a great year compared to the last few years, while collectively and, the system by itself has a really crappy year because it's being dismantled. So economic upheaval, because ultimately what's happening is the energy will disperse more evenly. The finances, the money, the resources are going to disperse more evenly, but it's going to be over time. 2026 is the beginning. I've talked a lot in past episodes about this pyramid structure where you have these, string pullers, right? Pulling all the strings, and we're the puppets, right? The 1% at the top are in this pyramid, and all of us down here, the collective humanity, the everyday person, we're at the bottom of the pyramid. And I've talked a lot about how astrology points to this, the energy points to this, but over the next few years, that pyramid is flipping completely upside down, which means the power, the money, the decision making is all shifting from the 1% to the people. We are going through Pluto and Aquarius. The last time we were here, I've said this a million times, is the American Revolution, right? Where all this power shifted from the king, the royals, this system where all of the control was at the top, and then it flipped into an entirely new system. Now that system is corrupt. It's not working anymore. But at the time, right? It was an entirely new system built on the power shifting down to the people collectively in a fair way. At least it was attempted to be a fair way, instead of this really small party of people at the top. Okay, we're seeing that exact same pattern again. The pyramid is flipping. The power, the money, the decision making is all going to disperse down to the collective, the people. And the 1% is going to see a dismantling of the systems that they have built. Okay, again, just the beginning of this, but that's very exciting. I hope that's encouraging to you. So we're going to see in 2026, a lot of us, especially those of us that have been financially struggling for years on years, or people who have had a lot of just core soul lessons around finances and scarcity and instability, there's going to be a relief in the flow of resources. So again, not like rags to riches overnight, but small, medium amounts of extra income and resources are going to start feeling unblocked. Like I said, 2025, there was a lot of stagnant energy. 2026, the new beginnings year, the numerology 1 year, the year of the horse, all of these things, forward moving energy. Okay, the ball starts rolling. So all of this income, all of these resources that have been held up by the 2025 energy, it's now the gates are going to start opening, and you're going to start having more opportunities, more money without hustling and burning out, and just feeling more supported without having to fight and struggle for it. Meaning without having to work 2 to 3 jobs, without feeling like you can never catch up, without feeling like there's no jobs available. All of these types of things, all of this type of energy is going to start loosening and becoming more supportive and less restrictive. Okay, there's going to be an income realignment. Jobs, side hustles, and opportunities are going to just show up easier, and they're going to be better matches to you. Like rather than having to stay in a job that feels like it's killing you slowly, or rather than having to do a side hustle that you just feel like you have to do, not because you want to do, all of those things are not going to be aligned anymore. We are moving into an energy that's going to feel a lot more aligned to, I'm going to pursue the job I actually want to do and that actually feels like it supports me and is fulfilling, whether that's being an entrepreneur. We're going to see a lot of businesses open this year, like entrepreneurial moves, small businesses starting to really take root. And again, that's part of that energy distribution where it's like we're moving away. It doesn't mean that everybody will leave corporate overnight. We're moving away from this energy of, again, all the power at the top where all of these big corporations are holding most of the jobs to a dispersing of the economy and of how we get our income into way more small businesses and way more like jobs that people just feel aligned to and they actually want to do. Money is going to feel easier to access. Also, and this was a big one that, again, so many psychics, channelers, remote viewers all pointed to over and over and over. And you've probably seen this, but we are going to see like debt and obligation pressure ease a lot because the system is starting to lose hold of us as a collective. Like credit scores, quite honestly, less people just, or more people just don't care anymore. They're like, you know what? My credit score is crap anyway. Like it just feels like a punishment system more than anything. It's like, I understand where the idea came from, but how it is implemented today only hurts people because the economy is not sustainable. The cost of living is not sustainable. And then people are, in retrospect, being punished for that. So it just kicks them further and further down instead of giving them resources or opportunities to move up. Okay, and so basically what that means is we as a collective are detaching from these systems of obligation where these debts that people can't pay off, whether it's medical debts or student loans, and just this rigged system of like the interest being so high that nobody can possibly pay it back on a reasonable income. These types of things are happening on such a wide scale that collectively people are just kind of detaching emotionally from it and being like, you know what, like forget it. I can't pay it. I'm not going to pay it. You know, like I don't have the means, or some people just being like flat out, I don't actually believe in this system and I'm not going to partake in it. I'm not advocating that you do anything illegal here. I'm just pointing out what energetically is already happening. And so what that does to the financial system is it takes away its power. It takes away the threat and the force that they were once able to control people with. And it just kind of loses its power because people stop engaging with that system. Okay, another big part of the financial shift that we're going to see is people stop being so consumed by consumerism. Like people are going to crave less just like empty shopping and like scrambling. Again, not overnight, not every single person all at once, but a general theme where many of us, especially those that, again, have done the work and are kind of on this higher functioning like frequency, are going to start feeling kind of detached from this need to like consume, you know, especially things that just don't really add value to our lives, just like extra stuff, extra junk. The things that we don't need, things that are harmful to the earth to consume. It will become more natural for us collectively to focus more on value than quantity. We will feel more called to just focus on sustainable security. Like we want to feel secure. We want to feel stable. We want to enjoy our lives and have the freedom financially to live a fulfilling life. But many of us are going to, again, start shifting away from just overconsumption, which is a major problem for us, especially in America. We are probably the worst of the worst, if I had to guess, in terms of overconsumption. Okay, that's that. Another thing that came up over and over again, and many psychics, and again, we've been talking about this forever, but this is why, is because everybody is sensing this energy shift, and that is within jobs and careers, okay? This is kind of like the next section we're talking about. Within jobs, careers, income, many people are going to continue to leave jobs that feel energetically misaligned. Jobs that, again, are affecting their mental health, are affecting their work-life balance, have people or coworkers that are just really toxic to their overall energy and joy and peace. There will be even more. We've already been seeing this in 2024, a lot in 2025, even more so in 2026, where it will start to become a noticeable conversation that we're having around like, wow, corporate. It's kind of like in 2020 when we noticed everybody started like working from home and we really shifted away from office spaces. It's going to be kind of like that, where it's like all of a sudden There's so many less people working corporate jobs. If people love their corporate job, those people can stay. If it's fulfilling and it's aligned, it's not like everybody is going to vanish overnight. But the people, which is many, many people, who feel like they are forced into a corporate role rather than there because they enjoy it and they feel fulfilled there, are going to find themselves unable to continue coping in that environment. Like, it's going to get to a point, it's going to reach a point, if it hasn't already, of feeling like I can no longer sustain this. I've got to start shifting out of this role and into something that actually fulfills me. Okay, which means a lot of hybrid income paths are going to grow, whether it's side projects or consulting or creative work that's maybe mixed with their work, like people going more part-time and doing part-time corporate and maybe part-time something else, and maybe that turns into a full-time something else. There's going to be less tolerance for overwork. Many employers and managers are going to find that employees are no longer putting up with just taking on more roles for no more pay. Like, being overworked, like a lot of people in a lot of different jobs are seeing like people quit or people leave, and then the managers or the employers or the bosses, they just shift all of that person's work or that role onto existing employees with no extra pay, with no extra reward, just more work to do to compensate for these people that are leaving. That is not sustainable, and that will not be something that people will continue to allow to happen, because again, the energy does not support it. And whenever the energy does not support, quite literally cannot exist. And it's a transition. It doesn't mean it all happens overnight. I try to remind you of this because I don't want this entire episode to come off as like, this is going to happen and it's going to happen overnight, and in a few months you look back and are like, well, that hasn't happened. It's because it happens slowly, and it doesn't happen to every single person. Everybody is on their own trajectory. Everybody's on their own timeline, their own speed. But if you back up and look at a bird's eye view, this is what you will start seeing. And not all of it, and some of it you'll see really obviously, and some of it won't be as obvious, but it doesn't mean it's not happening behind the scenes. It might be more like, oh, hindsight is 2020. That's been happening all along, but we didn't see it until it really started to pick up pace, that sort of thing. Also, we're going to see a lot more people engaging in spiritual businesses. We've already seen this. We already see an uptick in this, but it's just going to continue as more people shift to kind of this internal belief system. Collectively, we are kind of syncing up in a way. Collectively, more and more people are beginning to understand the energetic way of things. And I'm not talking about spiritual woo-woo, like everybody has to believe in spirit guides or everybody has to believe in higher selves. That's not the case. It's more like the collective is just starting to understand more, like literally the physics side, the science side of how energy works. And we're going to see that in, we'll get to this in a second, we're going to see that in like science and technology and those sort of advancements and things like that. So it's going to be happening on the science and the physics side, but also on the internal belief system side, where regardless of where your individual beliefs fall, we're going to start understanding how, again, we are more connected and how energy works on the whole. And so more people will be open to, I should have mentioned this more in like the spiritual section, but more people are going to be open to spiritual topics as a whole, because it's going to become more mainstream. And a lot of that is going to be through entrepreneurs that, either offer more spiritual services or energetic services or just spiritual businesses in general, whether that is crystal shops or yoga or even herbs and more holistic wellness topics, whether it's psychics. I mean, there's just all sorts of things where it might not even fall under the label spirituality. That's just kind of what I'm labeling it as. But a lot of these sorts of mediums and tools and resources that are more energetic or spiritually based, we're going to see that job market really, really take off even more so. And I want to note this because a lot of people are going to hear that and think, oh, it's going to become saturated. Here's what we need to understand. We are leaving the energy of the corporate hustle world where everything has to be so competitive. It's not going to work like that anymore. Instead of thinking, oh, this section is going to be oversaturated. No, what's going to happen is less people are going to be at the top of the pyramid where everybody's getting all the attention. And instead, the energy is going to be dispersed and shared, meaning it's going to be less like these people are really popular and everybody's going to pay attention to them, and more so all of these different people who offer these services or these businesses, the energy is going to be shared. And so it's going to be more of kind of like that village mindset, which is, again, the energy that we're moving towards over the next 10, 20, 50 years, is more of we are stable in the way that we support each other in these little sections. Like more people will have small businesses that are supported by smaller groups of people, but very loyally, versus one person having millions of followers and them kind of getting all the attention. Does that make sense? So I want to mention that within this whole like jobs and careers, because that will be not just in spiritual businesses, but in all businesses. Again, we're moving away from the corporate top world and we're moving into dispersed energy where more mom and pop shops, more small businesses that are supported because the energy is being dispersed. And so it's like everybody is going to get a piece of the pie in a way that feels very, ultimately, not all in 1 year, but that feels very supportive. Like everybody will be able, I say everybody, I'm not saying every single person guaranteed, but I'm saying on a large scale, collectively, more people will be able to hold a small business and have it feel like that supports a comfortable lifestyle than a few people at the top having millions and millions and billions of dollars that they couldn't even spend if they tried. That's just unnecessary. It's like there's enough resource for all of us to be comfortable without people who have a stupid amount of money, that is more than they need, while other people having way less than they need. Okay, friends, I'm actually going to end part 1 right here and move into part 2 in another episode just because it is so long. But we still have a lot of ground to cover, and I think it's just going to get even more interesting. So come back and listen to part 2. As a reminder, I do offer personal psychic readings. You can find that on my website, link to my show notes, link to my link tree, personal psychic readings that will give you a lot more insight to what is upcoming for you, what you need to focus on, what your guides have to say, and all of that. So if you are interested, that is always linked for you. But I will see you guys in part 2 of 2026 predictions. Bye. Thank you.